This is Unboxed by Aramex. It's a podcast series of compelling stories and cultural perspectives. This time, it's artificial intelligence, and our guest is Nasser Bostan. Nasser's got 3 decades of leadership roles in AI, in cybersecurity, digital operations, the delivery of complex digital transformation programs, and business and commercial operations. He's the founder and CEO of Simulacra.x, which is a deep AI company specializing in neural symbolic AI. I know. And autonomous agent technology. Nasser, welcome to Unboxed.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
It's nice to have you here. What I want to try to do today is really zoom in on AI and try to kind of dispel some of the myths, obviously. But before we do that, let's start with you and just get the Nasser Bostan history lesson, if you like.
Sure. So I'm originally from the UK, born and raised. I've specialized in AI and cybersecurity. As you mentioned, I've spent the last 10 years also living in Asia Pacific, separate Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, places like that. Spent a couple of years in Saudi Arabia working on the NEOM project. So NEOM, I'm sure you've heard of the big mega city, the line that's being built out in Saudi Arabia.
For sure.
Spent time out there before moving here to Dubai to, as you said earlier, kick off my 2 companies, one of which is Simulacra.x.
What's the other one?
Sage AI.
Okay.
So Sage is the one that focuses on agentic AI, and Simulacra focuses on neural symbolic AI.
Okay, so what we have to do, first of all, is try to drill down a little bit, because my next question, I wrote these questions because I have to get the phrasing right. So you specialize in neural symbolic AI and autonomous agent technology. And I thought, I need to find out what that is. So what is that?
Neural symbolic AI is basically the fusion of neural networks. So neural networks are the basis of what we are seeing today in AI. That's generative AI like ChatGPT and other sort of GPTs like that.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit more about what neural networks are later in the conversation. But what that neural symbolic AI does is it takes the neural part of AI with what we call symbolic AI. That is the ability to build a knowledge base of people's, places, and things, and model the relationships between them so that the AI can fuse both of those things together and start truly reasoning and contextualizing and really starting to deal with major complex problems like, I don't know, medical, legal, this kind of thing. So it takes generative AI to the next level.
Okay, and autonomous agent technology.
So autonomous agents are a reasonably new fad that's just come about. You've probably seen quite a lot of news going on about agentic AI, as it's called. Yeah. And so agentic AI or autonomous AI agents are basically software programs that can think, reason, and execute tasks autonomously outside of human involvement or control. Now that sounds quite scary.
It does.
And of course, there's a huge amount of use cases that these things can be used for, but it's very much in its infancy at the moment. But yeah, that's basically what agentic AI is.
Okay. I've kind of messed this up in a way because I've asked you about two fairly in-depth kind of definitions. And really I should have started with a definition of AI, because artificial intelligence is one of those things that everybody's talking about. You go to dinner parties, people talk about it. You're at the office and the company's doing something in AI in some way. And most of us are a little bit like, yeah, AI, it's everywhere. Do we really know what it is? I would put forward that probably most of us couldn't really define AI. How would you define artificial intelligence?
Great question. With AI, I think at the heart of AI is what I mentioned earlier. It's what we call neural networks. Now, neural networks are basically effectively modeled on the human brain in that you have nodes which are equivalent to neurons in the human brain, and you have connections between those nodes which are similar to synapses in the human brain as well. Okay. And so what the neural network basically is a series of computer algorithms that sit sit over the top of a huge amount of data that the AI is trained on. The training of the AI is effectively just modeling the parameters and the configuration of the neural network to achieve certain outputs, text, image, video, this kind of thing. So yeah, it's basically a neural network that we use something called machine learning, which is training the AI on how to generate images and text and videos.
Okay. Is it fair to say then at the moment, most what we know as AI is really more machine learning, i.e. is it really the early stage of AI?
Yeah.
Is that what we're really dealing with?
Most of what we see at the moment in terms of generative AI is based on this concept of machine learning, and I can explain briefly what how that sort of neural network works at the highest level,
Right.
because I think it's very important that people understand what AI actually is in terms of its capabilities and how it generates these seemingly amazing responses. Right, some of these images, text that we're seeing out there. And basically, when you enter a prompt into your computer, your AI, which is whatever you want to ask, question you want to ask it, for example, that's just converted into something called tokens. These tokens are just representations of words, characters, letters. That's all they are.
Okay.
Those tokens are then converted into something called embeddings. Embeddings are just mathematical representations of the same thing: words, characters, context, meanings, relationships, in a way that the neural network can understand. That's just simply fed into the neural network itself. And the neural network is just simply a series of these nodes that I mentioned earlier that are all interconnected. The first the real magic happens in what we call the hidden layer. And the hidden layer is basically consisting of nodes which have the meaning and the context and the relationships and the patterns and things like that within the data that's been input, right? It's as simple as that. And so each node just simply runs a calculation and says on some pre-existing configurations that we've already programmed it with, and says, I should be activated for this query because I resemble the answer to this query. And then it simply gets passed to something called the output layer. The output layer is all of the possible combinations of answers that could be, respond back to the user query. The neural network just puts all that together into a simple response and then spits the response out. So it's important to understand that the neural network, there's no magic that happens in there. It's simply a series of pre-configured parameters and configurations and algorithms that are run on the data and mathematical formulas that are applied to it. And that's what generates the response.
And that's really important to remember, isn't it? Because it's not, it works in the way or it's mimicking the human brain, if you like, in the way it works.
Correct.
But it is not the human brain.
It is not the human brain. And what's really important to understand, of course, is it's very, very good at what we call syntactically generating responses. That is grammatically correct paragraphs, sentences, right? So it's very, very good at saying, okay, I know what order words need to be in, and I know what the relationships between all of these words are, and therefore I can generate a response. But what it does not understand, of course, is the semantic meaning of those words. Like if you and I are conversing, obviously I can talk to you as I'm talking to you now, and I understand the meaning of what I'm telling you. AI does not understand meaning. It just understands the grammatically correct way of constructing sentences.
Okay, hence the emotionless,
Correct.
picture that we have of robots and everything else.
Correct.
So we're all talking about it. AI is everywhere. I kind of have a slightly better understanding of it now. But where is it for most of us, for the average person sat watching this thinking AI, blah, 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 where is it most useful to us?
It's got huge applications across multiple places. It's still relatively in its infancy, AI, in terms of generative capabilities. So, you've seen chatbots like ChatGPT that are able to generate what look like incredibly, intelligent and coherent responses. image generation, text generation, and all of the applications that you can utilize for that. But then it's also seeing use in things like marketing, creating marketing materials. It's seeing a lot of uses in the legal field now in terms of creation of standard contract templates, things like that. It's seeing a lot of uses now in the medical field where it's able to decipher patterns in medical data that perhaps we wouldn't, human beings would normally not be able to see. So yeah, it's being applied across multiple different disciplines.
Okay, so I mean, it can drive cars, can't it? Or the autonomous vehicle thing. It can create art of one description or another. It can create music. It can create stories. It can draft contracts, as you said. One of the things I wanted to put to you is it can create podcasts like this, and I've got an example of that here. So what I did, I fed your bio, which is a single page bio, into Notebook LM. And I said, look, can you give me a podcast? So your bio's single page, I don't know, 300 words, 400 words. And it spat back at me within 2 minutes, a 5-minute podcast based on your bio, the things that you do and the things that you've done. So here's the first, I guess, let's play about a minute or so.
Okay, so we've got this bio, right, for Nasser Bostan.
Yeah, classic kind of high achiever on the surface, at least. Founder, CEO, all that.
Exactly. A whole string of impressive titles. But like what really caught my eye, this juxtaposition.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, tell me.
Well, on the one hand, we've got this guy, right? He's deep into cutting-edge AI, cybersecurity, like he's building the future.
Right. Pushing the limits of tech.
But then you see him spending his time building homes.
Wait, what? Homes?
Yeah, for communities in Southeast Asia.
Wow, that's a pretty big contrast.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So how do those two worlds how do they connect?
That's the puzzle, I think. That's what I'm hoping we can kind of figure out today, It's really fascinating how that contrast might actually help us understand what drives him, like what motivates him.
Yeah.
Makes you think is impact. Like his number one thing. Does he see a connection between, AI and this more hands-on giving back?
Okay, so let's start with that connection then. Yeah, like his career, his path.
So that's probably a better introduction to you than I did. Let's be absolutely honest.
Than I did as well.
More than likely. Notebook LM, I fed it in and it spat that back in less than 2 minutes, probably about a minute and a half. A single page bio. So it kind of sums up what you've done, what you've been doing. I think it sounds really engaging. It sounds real. Those are not two people discussing you. Those are just voices being activated by AI. What did you think?
It's phenomenal, isn't it? And it just shows the capabilities of and how complex and capable these neural networks are now getting, and their ability to sort of simulate not just correct sentences and paragraphs and able to sort of decipher data like that, but the way they generate the voices now with that very realistic intonation and seeming emotion in how it's being done. It's just incredibly and the progress that we've made just over the last year, a year ago, this wasn't possible, but the industry is moving so quickly now that things like this are becoming commonplace. And, I saw another example, if you don't mind me mentioning, about effectively reading minds, an AI that could read a mind. And, I saw a demonstration of the fact that a person was looking at, say, a picture of a pizza, and the AI was asked to sort of decipher or copy what it thought the human was looking at, and came out with a perfect picture of a pizza. Now, how did it do this? The human was connected to an MRI machine.
Right.
The AI had been trained on the output, the brainwaves, the patterns that come out of the MRI machine, and how those patterns can be interpreted into whatever image the human was looking at. And it was able to recognize that these brainwaves were representative of a pizza, and able to draw a realistic looking photo of a pizza. So, we're getting into this world now where, you can have AIs that could literally start reading minds as what we're looking at, what we're thinking. So yeah, phenomenally capable.
The lines are blurred though, aren't they? Because until this point, it's been that we plug the info in, so we teach the AI, as it were. So that sounds like the AI is going to very soon be teaching us. Are we close to that, or are we there?
I think we're already heading in that direction. If you look at things like language learning apps, if you look at things like study apps, these are all large language model powered apps that are already out there that are teaching people things like, how to learn Chinese or how to learn Japanese or whatever. In fact, I use that for myself. But I think in terms of truly, a human teacher level learning from AI, I think we're a long way away from that at the moment, because at the end of the day, human beings, teachers, not only have knowledge of their chosen topic, but they have, context, the societal and cultural awareness. They have, gut instinct. They have EQ. They have emotions, and all of this plays a part into how you teach somebody something, no matter what it is. So I think we're a long way away from a truly human teacher level AI.
So that's an interesting area. It's this interaction between AI and humans. And the fear, I think, for a lot of people is AI is going to literally displace a need for humans in lots of ways. And that means a change in mindset and a change in training so that, we can remain relevant, I suppose. That's a natural fear, I guess, that people are going to lose jobs. People will be displaced by machines.
It's an inevitability that will happen. The world is changing now, and AI is, one of those sort of once in a millennia type, technology changes that come along, and it's fundamentally going to change everything that we do as a society. But there is the argument around whether it's going to be job replacement or just job augmentation. And what I mean by that is, if you look at things like the population crisis that we're facing, there is every projection, if you look around globally, is that the human population is actually going to decline, not increase, if you look at birth rates across most of the world now. And so, actually we could be looking at AI starting to take up some of those roles that unfortunately we just simply don't have enough people to do anymore, leaving humans to sort of focus on the more value add or higher cognitive type functions or jobs that, we're very good at, as it were. So I don't see that as a threat. I see it as a natural progression of, a declining population and the inevitable march of technology.
Well, there's some things that AI can do really well. AI models, scientists can predict gene expression. They can design new proteins. They can create real precision medicines. That much we know about. So some things AI does and can and will do much better. But there's always going to be something that you need a human for, is the point. This is not a doomsday scenario. This is just a point. This is kind of a juncture, isn't it? This is a turn in the road.
Yes, absolutely right. Yeah. The AI, in my view, will never fully replicate human level of intelligence. It just, I don't think that's possible. And to take an example of what you're saying, if I sort of rewind back to the Second World War, right? You had General Eisenhower, who was the supreme commander of the Allied forces, and they were planning the invasion of Normandy, right? The D-Day landings. And on the day, the planned day of the landings, he got obviously all his data points, weather, sea conditions, the preparation of the army, readiness of this or that, and everything looked absolutely perfect and ready to go. But something told him from a gut instinct perspective that he shouldn't proceed, that there was some reason not to do that. And sure enough, later that day, an unexpected storm rolled in just over the area that they were going to do the actual landings. And so and then they launched the invasion actually the day after. Now, that's a perfect example of how if you fed that into, say, an AI, the AI would have made the decision to, look, we should go, everything's perfect, let's go for it. But that gut instinct that came in, that told Eisenhower that this wasn't the right time, that is not something that you can model into an AI.
That's such a good example. One of the things that concerns me a little bit is the misinformation is everywhere these days. Now, so it's hard to distinguish what's true and what isn't. And sometimes you wonder whether anything needs to be true anymore. We've all experienced that. Now, since AI and learning algorithms extrapolate from the data they're given, the quality of that data is key. For sure. So if designers don't provide representative data, resulting AI systems become biased or unfair or simply wrong. And that's something, I guess, that how do you police that, I think is the question I'm asking. What do you do about that?
Yeah, it's a huge concern for sure. Not only bias training, but the parameters that you configure the AI with are super important in terms of what it generates as a response. Anthropic, who built the Claude chatbot, rival to OpenAI's ChatGPT, they ran a series of tests which we refer to as explainable AI or responsible AI to answer your question, right? So there's a global acts, for example, the EU have written the AI Act at the moment that really starts putting in the parameters that need to be put in place to have fully explainable and fully responsible AI in terms of the outputs that it generates. So I'll go back to the Claude thing in a second, but to answer your question specifically, the problem is that jurisdictions play a part here. A lot of the big AI companies are based out of California, and you may have seen recently that some of the AI acts that had been planned in that state have actually been repealed or put on hold for the moment because they felt that it was going to negatively impact the development of AI. So the challenge we're having at the moment is that these development of a lot of these AIs are actually in the hands of the individual companies and their interpretation of what they believe is responsible and what is explainable. And if you take Claude, as I said, as an example, they ran a series of tests to say, okay, let's see if we can explain how our AI is coming out with the answers it does. And so they asked it a question, first of all, okay, tell us about who you are. Who are you, Claude? And it came out with the obvious answer. I am an AI, I'm headquartered in blah, 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 San Francisco. Oh, tell us a bit more about San Francisco. Well, it's got the Golden Gate Bridge. It's this, and all this kind of stuff. Then they tweaked a few of the parameters within the neural network, one of which was the node that represents the Golden Gate Bridge. And they dialed it up to the max to say that its weight and its bias is more important than anything else, okay? Then they asked the same question. They said, so tell us who you are. And Claude said, I am the Golden Gate Bridge. I am the physical embodiment of this, and I have traffic going over me every day, and people paint me all the time. And so it was a really interesting experiment that just showed the power of the individual company or developer who can tweak those parameters and make it come out with complete nonsensical answers. And to your point, this is where my major concern is around responsible and explainable AI, is that, it can be manipulated in that way.
It's trust, isn't it? It's
Yes.
trust in development. And we all know that not everybody has our best interests at heart.
Exactly that. And of course, we all have to understand what do we mean by best interest, right? And so, ethics and morals can differ from society to society and from culture to culture. And so if we do end up having, a prevalence of, say, one or two AIs that have been developed by, a company in a certain jurisdiction, and that effectively imposes their understanding of what they believe is responsible and explainable and moral and ethical, then, you start entering into a really grey area, right? A bit of a murky world. And what really concerns me about this, of course, is that our children are going to be increasingly reliant on this technology. And if you look at again, OpenAI, Claude, people like that, they are trying to make their AIs as helpful, harmless, and honest as possible. Those are the three mantras that they've got to develop. And the thing about these AIs is as our children get more and more reliant on talking to these AIs are being developed to be almost the ideal version of a human. Like, you'll always get told what you want to hear, and, I'm super nice, I'm helpful, I'm harmless and everything. And so there's this danger that, our children are going to start becoming more in tune and with AI than they could be perhaps with their fellow human beings, right? And we've seen examples of that already happening out there. But the problem is, what's the counter to that? The counter is, okay, maybe you make it less helpful, harmless, and honest. Well, what does that look like? And do you start crossing over into harmful content that you now no longer control because you've changed the parameters of the AI? So we're in this weird sort of, not weird, but we're in this situation at the moment as we evolve this capability that we really need to decide which way we want to go with it.
Can I ask you to speculate a little bit? In this series of Unboxed, we've heard from David Brin, who wrote The Postman, the Kevin Costner movie, and he's at heart a physicist. He consults for NASA, and he speculates entertainingly. That's how he puts it. Just a few of the questions that I asked David, and I asked him this. Google's Director of Engineering, Ray Kurzweil, says that by 2029, computers will have human-level intelligence. He said consistently that AI will pass a valid Turing test and therefore achieve human levels of intelligence by 2029. So that's now 5 years away. Do you think that's true?
I'm skeptical that it will achieve that level. Now, if you look at, say, the Turing test, right? The Turing test is simply if you have a conversation with an AI, would it be indistinguishable from a human conversation? Arguably, we're already there.
If you heard the podcast.
You heard the podcast, right? I mean, to me, that was just two human beings pretty much talking. And you can have a conversation with ChatGPT today, especially in advanced voice mode. And, it's hard to distinguish that conversation from a human being. So arguably, we've already pretty much past the Turing test, but that for me is not an indicator of intelligence. That's simply an indicator of being able to put grammatically correct paragraphs together. So there's a big difference between intelligence and the creation of syntactically correct grammar. And that's, for me, is all that the Turing test does. And of course, it's coupled with advanced voice mode that allows it to detect sentiment analysis within the sentence and therefore emote in the right way as well, right? So that. But in terms of general intelligence, it's a really good question because if you look, there's a book by a guy called Neil Lawrence. It's called The Atomic Human. Fascinating book. The basic premise of the book is he's saying, okay, we humans always differentiated ourselves because of our intelligence, when compared to, say, animal species and stuff like that. We're more intelligent. And his view was, as AI is kind of slicing away those intelligent capabilities from human beings, what is that little atomic piece, that little kernel that defines us as human beings? Like, if it's not intelligence anymore, what is it? How are we now defining ourselves as human beings? And his argument, as I was mentioning earlier, is that intelligence is therefore not just the ability to process data and provide an outcome. Intelligence is also emotional intelligence. It's societal and cultural awareness. It's context. It's lots of other things that all come together. And what we've also got to remember about us as human beings is we have both reflexive and reflective intelligence, right? We have reflexive intelligence, which is our natural response to things like, oh, I don't want to get burnt by this fire. And things that are programmed into us that are inherently part of being human. And then there's our reflective intelligence, which is our ability to reason and understand the world around us and make a conscious decision based on that available data that goes beyond just, what we've been taught, as it were, in schools. So I honestly don't think that a 5-year time span is anywhere close to getting to human level intelligence.
Okay. What might be a reasonable time span? And I'm not sure that I want to use the word the singularity, the kind of biological link, or that AI will become conscious to describe it. I think that's a little bit misleading. But what might be a time span to get to somewhere near indistinguishability?
Most people, experts say it's between 15 to 100 years, any time between that time span. But this is a really interesting question, because before we can answer that question, we need to understand what we mean by consciousness or sentience, right?
Yeah.
If you look at consciousness, René Descartes, the French philosopher back in the 1600s, he, did a thought experiment where he was saying, okay, how can I prove that I am a conscious being? Having contemplated this for a long time, he came out with the famous quote, "I think, therefore I am," right? Which is basically saying that I know I'm a conscious human being because I can think, and therefore because I can think, it means I'm conscious and I'm able to display consciousness, as it were. But what he was saying by extension was that we cannot therefore prove anything above the fact that we as an individual, me or you separately, are conscious. Like, you could be, as far as I'm concerned, a very clever automation, right? I cannot prove that you are a conscious human
before.
Yeah. And so, first of all, the question is, we don't even understand what consciousness is, right? We don't know how it emerges from this set of particles. Yeah. So how, therefore, do we prove that an AI is going to become conscious if we can't can't definitively prove that each other is conscious? And I think that's where we're going to struggle, because I'm not saying that AI may not become conscious, but how would we prove AI is conscious? We wouldn't be able to. And so we may very well get to a point, like you said, maybe by 2045, where AI is effectively displaying human level intelligence, but whether it's going to be sentient and conscious and able to make conscious decisions, I really don't know the answer to that. I'm skeptical only because it took the universe 13.8 billion years to develop consciousness in us, right? That's the age of the universe. So for us to think that within 100 years we can do what nature took 13.8 billion years to do, I think kind of hints a little bit of arrogance. So I'm skeptical.
The last kind of AI question I wanted to ask you is that I guess it's the standard question. It's the dangers of AI, because we've all seen The Matrix, Terminator series of films, all those things, and the machines take over and they're all bad and they want to mistreat us and they're going to come back from the future. All of that stuff. How worried really should people be, in your opinion?
I think there is a low likelihood of that happening, and only because, on the assumption that the people developing AIs, are intelligent enough to understand that we need to build fail-safes into what we're developing, so that worst case scenarios, you said, something goes wrong and we can literally pull the plug. Because, AIs sit on servers, right? And where do servers sit? Servers sit in data centers. And what do data centers run off? Electricity. And so worst comes to worst, what could you do? You literally pull the plug on this, or you bomb the data center, in the worst case scenario. So I think that there is a multitude of dangers that are associated with AI, what we've talked about already, right? Incorrect information, post-truth, all that kind of stuff. But the chances of AI becoming sentient and destroying the human race, I think, is very remote indeed.
Yeah. I've always felt people talk about the computer and the computer goes mad, and generally the IT guy comes in and says, unplug it and plug it in again. Yeah. And I always think, if you can unplug it, you've won the computer war, basically, beaten the machine.
Right.
That's kind of good to know. It's time to get your wisdom. And one of the reasons for this podcast is to talk to people who have a very specific knowledge or are doing something a little bit different, maybe doing something first, like Aramex did back in the day and still do. So I've kind of a set of closing questions, and I've got 8 or 9 questions. I've chosen 3 for you, Nasser. What's the one misconception about this topic? And I guess the topic is broadly AI, so that gives you some leeway. What's the most common misconception that you wish more people understood?
I think for me, it's kind of what we've touched upon. We have this tendency as human beings to anthropomorphize everything. That is, to project human-like qualities onto everything, not just AI, but, statues and representations of everything that we make. We always kind of humanize it. You can build a collection of parts and it looks vaguely like a human being, and all of a sudden you start projecting human-like qualities onto it. And I think the big mistake that a lot of people do is projecting human-like qualities onto AI itself. And as I was saying earlier, people should always bear in mind that it is not intelligent. It is an unthinking intelligence. It provides outputs based on parameters. So it is able to brilliantly grammatically put together sentences that sound very coherent, but it doesn't understand what it's saying. It has no concept of understanding or meaning or feeling. And so it's really important that people understand the difference between syntactic outputs, which are grammatically correct outputs, that are unthinking, versus human beings, which we are a thinking intelligence. We are sentient, we are conscious, we have context, we have awareness. AI does not have that. So always, always, always bear in mind, unthinking versus thinking, two very different things.
It's interesting that, because the podcast that we played a clip of earlier, Your Bio, Notebook LM spat the podcast out for me. I've listened to that a few times. We'll post a link to it as well with this. So if you want to listen to it, you can. But having listened to it 3, 4, 5 times, I started to see where it didn't quite work. It didn't quite gel. But on first listening, it was, wow, this is unbelievable. And it is in every way, in that it's been created seemingly from nothing. But it doesn't quite work. And it'd be interesting if you do listen to it again, see what you do think.
And just on that point, actually, Tim, if you put the exact same question in again to the prompt that you entered to generate that, you will get a different podcast.
Yeah.
So what does that suggest to you? It suggests that, again, it's unthinking. It's simply taking some parameters, running it through its neural network, and coming out with a response.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do that. We'll post a link to the original podcast and I'll do it again. Let's see what the differences are. Second question for you, your wisdom. What motivates you, Nasser, and what do you consider success?
What motivates me? So on a personal level, I'm very motivated by knowledge, the pursuit of knowledge. I have this burning desire to understand how things work, and how everything from quantum mechanics through to cosmology through to AI, the human nature, reality, consciousness. All of this it just absolutely fascinates me. But how does that translate? It translates into also wanting to really do things that are going to change things for people, for the world. So I don't have a massive amount of motivation when it comes to things like making massive amounts of money or, being well known or anything like that. One of the reasons I joined NEOM, for example, was, NEOM's approach to technology and trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems was something that was very attractive to me. So for me, success is about building things or providing solutions that do as much good as possible in the world and affect positively as many people in the world as well.
Okay. And where do you get inspiration from? People, things, places?
I find I get inspiration from people mainly. And what I mean by that is it could be ordinary people, like, I don't know, a single mother who's trying to raise her children and holding 2 jobs down and having to be a full-time mom at the same time. That for me is incredibly inspiring. People who have to overcome hardships and difficulties to achieve. And so, as I said, for me, success or inspiration is not just somebody who's built a gigantic company and has made millions and stuff like that. It could be, the single mother who's able to put food on the table and able to feed her children. That for me is success, given the context of where that person has come from. And for me, that's massively inspirational. So yeah, I really get inspiration from that kind of thing.
Final question for you, and we ask this in every episode. It's always the last question. What would you like to see happen or change or affect most in the world? What would you like most to unbox, and why would you like to unbox it?
I think the world's biggest challenge is really around inequality and poverty. And so I come from quite a poor background myself. So I kind of know where, I've come from that same area myself. And if I look at, the sort of inequality and poverty that's in the world today, the recent Oxfam report that said that in 1990, 3.6 billion people lived below the poverty line. And now, all these years later, it's still the exact same amount of people still living below the poverty line, 3.6 billion people. And when you look at the income disparity and wealth distribution around the world, then it's just incredibly unfair in the way that the world is kind of set up. So what I'd love to unbox, and I'm trying to do my small part, because I'm one person, I can't change the world, but what I can do is I can do, we mentioned earlier on the podcast thing that, I like to build homes in deprived communities in Southeast Asia, working on things like girls' education in the same region. So for me, if we can somehow come together and solve poverty and solve global inequality, then that would be an amazing thing.
It's a good place to finish. Nasser Bostan has over 3 decades of leadership roles in AI, cybersecurity, IT, and digital operations, and a whole lot more as well. Nasser, it's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.